The NPR defunding bill we're hearing is coming up first today on the schedule, so watch out for that in this next 30 minutes or so. Have a great day.
I hereby appoint the Honorable Ted Poe to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
The prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Coughlin.
Lord, may this celebration of the Feast of St. Patrick give all people smiling eyes and grateful hearts. Knowing that all work is sacred in your sight, and well aware that work in government is very difficult in today's world, we pray that the following Celtic adage may be realized in all who work here in the Congress of these United States. May you see in what you do the beauty of your own soul. May the sacredness of your work bring healing light and renewal to those who work with you and those who see and receive your work. May your work never weary you. May every dawn find you alert, approaching the new day with dreams, possibilities, and promises. May every evening find you gracious and fulfilled. And may every good work wrapped in prayer calm, console, and renew you. Amen.
The Chair has examined the Journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1, Rule 1, the Journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Barrow.
Members, staff, and guests will please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain up to 5 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from West Virginia rise? Without objection, the man is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, this past week, West Virginia experienced a tremendous loss. Private First Class Andrew Harper from Maysville, West Virginia, died from injuries he sustained while serving in Afghanistan. He represented America with the utmost pride and dignity. A graduate from University High School in Morgantown, Private Harper was stationed in Kandahar province when he was sustained his fatal injuries during a non-combat incident. The admiration of our community felt for this 19-year-old man in his service are immense. So many are shocked by the news of Andrew's passing. This brave young man was so very promising. There is no question that Andrew left a great legacy, and his memory should be honored. My wife Mary and I, as well as all West Virginians, will keep Private Harper, his family, his friends, and his entire unit, the 3rd Squadron, 2nd Stryker Cavalry Regiment, in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to commemorate the 46th anniversary of Bloody Sunday and to recognize the courage of my colleague, Congressman John Lewis, and the many other heroes of the civil rights movement. A couple of weeks ago, I was privileged to retrace the footsteps of history with John Lewis and walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. There, nearly 50 years ago, some 600 demonstrators marched to take a stand for African-American voting rights. On the bridge, they were savagely attacked by state and local lawmen to prohibit their crossing. Journalists captured those brutal attacks, sparking outrage that led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Congressman Lewis recently returned to the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Again, he was met by a large group of police, this time as an honor guard. We've come a long way in the last 50 years, and we still have a long way to go to ensure equality and justice for all. But we never could have come as far as we have without the courage and the devotion of countless men and women just like John Lewis. Now yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, in my nearly 27 years in the United States Air Force, I learned that one of the most critical elements necessary to overcome a determined enemy is the element of surprise. Based on my experience and the proven battle-tested history of the many successful conflicts that our nation has endured over the years, I must stand in opposition to House Continuing Resolution 28. Surprise is a tactical element best determined by field commanders based on battlefield conditions. As such, decisions on troop movement should be made by commanders in the field, not politicians in Washington. Should this bill pass, we give up the element of surprise. We break the trust in the relationship we have built with the Afghan people and our allies. And the sacrifice of our young men and women in uniform would be meaningless if we simply walk away. General Petraeus has said the Taliban and al-Qaeda obviously would trumpet this as a victory, as a success. Needless to say, it would completely undermine everything our troopers have fought so much for and sacrificed so much for. I urge my colleagues to vote no, and Mr. Speaker, I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
I ask permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, 1 year ago, President Obama signed the historic Affordable Care Act into law. Since that time, we've seen an all-out assault by the special interests and health insurance companies. Americans are tired of this debate. They are tired of the misinformation. Congress must stand up for the middle class. We must protect families. We must stop companies from arbitrarily canceling coverage after patients become sick, prevent children from being denied coverage due to pre-existing conditions, and never again let insurance companies place lifetime limits on health coverage. Mr. Speaker, let's give the reform a chance to work. Reject the special interests and extreme rhetoric. Make sure every American family is protected when it comes to health care. I yield back.
Yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Utah is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The United States Congress is the only place that I know of that where we talk about trillions of dollars, trillion with a T. How much is $1 trillion? It's a number so large it's hard to get your arms around it. But if you were to spend $1 million a day, $1 million every day, it would take you almost 3,000 years to get to $1 trillion. This nation right now is more than $14 trillion in debt. The country is going to spend more than $3.5 trillion over 12 months, where more than $220 billion was added to our debt just last month. Somehow, some way, this government has got to recognize that we're going to have to do more with less, that the proper role of government does not allow us to unilaterally use this, the voting card of the United States Congress, as the biggest credit card that has ever faced this planet. We have to do more with less. We have to be disciplined. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise? The gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've come to the floor today to talk about a crisis that our country is facing. We all know that our nation's future strength is directly dependent upon our commitment to a robust science agenda. The cuts of our nation's science programs in the CR threaten to set our nation back even as we continue to look forward to our future. An investment in science is about ensuring America's memories are honored by investing in dreams that are yet even brighter. As an author of the first bipartisan America Competes Act, we responded to many top academics and corporate and business leaders who knew that investments in STEM education is what will ensure that our nation's future science and engineering leaders will never need to leave our shores in order to obtain a world-class education. And December 2010 was one of our finest hours as a Congress when we returned to our triumphant moment of passing the Comprehensive Bipartisan American Peace Reauthorization Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute, if I can extend my mark.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle continue to refer to the so-called health care reform bill as the Affordable Health Care Act. There are a lot of questions after 1 year after passage, but one question has been answered. It is not the Affordable Medical Care Act. It is the Unaffordable Medical Care Act. Why do I say that? Well, HHS has decided to give over 1,000 waivers to businesses, to unions, and now even to states because they find they can't afford what's required in the bill. Secondly, I haven't met a single constituent whose health care costs by way of their insurance policies or programs has gone down. They've all gone up as a direct result of the bill passed on this floor and signed by the President. So let's at least have some truth in labeling. It is not the Affordable Health Care Act. It is increasingly becoming the Unaffordable Health Care Act.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Illinois rise?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlelady from Illinois is recognized.
Friday, March 25th, marks the 100th anniversary of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. The death of 146 workers, mostly young women, were avoidable. If the owners of the factory had not locked the doors to the stairwells and exits, if they had installed a stable fire escape or put in sprinklers, many of those lives would not have been painfully and tragically lost. The International Ladies Garment Workers Union didn't just mourn the victims, they organized. Their activism resulted in the passage of major worker protections, not just new fire safety laws, but laws against the 7-day work week and child labor. The Triangle tragedy helped expand the right to union representation, a voice at work. 100 years later, we confront a coordinated effort to roll back those hard-fought gains. Just as the Triangle fire spurred people into action, the anti-working family agenda of Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker has mobilized millions. The message is clear. We will not go back. I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back her time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Let me wish everyone a happy St. Patty's Day. It is unfortunate that we have so much effort here in the House to recite the problem rather than to focus on solutions. And we hear this discussion about our national debt. We have these paltry efforts. We had cut $6 billion on the same day that the debt went up $72 billion. We have the proposal by the majority to address the debt by cutting 1.5% out of a small corner of the budget, doing serious damage to our nation's efforts in education and science and innovation. Well, I would hope that we would think for a minute about what we could actually do to take Americans' exceptional past and to create a roadmap, a real roadmap for our nation's future, ensuring it on a fiscal footing that would be stronger. I've introduced this morning H.R. 1125. It is a proposal to address the nation's debt, create a debt-free America. I invite the House to debate on it. Thank you very much.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to take from the Speaker's table House Resolution 147, ask for its immediate consideration in the House.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 147, resolution providing for the expenses of certain committees of the House of Representatives in the 112th Congress.
Is there objection to the consideration of the resolution? Without objection, the resolution is agreed to, and the motion is to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Mr. Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 174 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 19, House Resolution 174. Resolved, that upon the adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill, H.R. 1076, to prohibit federal funding of national public radio and the use of federal funds to acquire radio content. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. The bill shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill to final passage without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce, and 2, 1 motion to recommit.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 1 hour.
For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Slaughter, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume during the consideration of this resolution. All time yielded are for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
House Resolution 174 provides for a closed rule for consideration of H.R. 1076. The rule provides for ample debate on this bill and gives members of both the minority and the majority an opportunity to participate in the debate. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of this rule in the underlying bill. H.R. 1076 prohibits direct funding to NPR National Public Radio. In fiscal year 2010, NPR received over $5 million in direct federal funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the Department of Education, the Department of Commerce, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Moreover, hundreds of public radio stations received direct radio grants in the amount of $67 million. Radio stations can use these grants for whatever they want. It's unrestricted. Often stations use these funds to pay dues to NPR and pay fees for NPR programming. According to NPR's website, they are an independent, self-supporting media organization. However, they also admit their revenue comes primarily from fees paid by their member stations. In fact, membership dues, station programming fees account for 36% of NPR's funding. In H.R. 1, we started the process of letting NPR operate on its own, without taxpayer involvement, by defunding it for the remainder of fiscal year 2011. However, H.R. 1 only addressed appropriated funds for the rest of the current fiscal year. The bill we have before us today addresses the authorized use of funds, not just for the rest of fiscal year 2011, but going forward. Under this bill, NPR will continue to provide its programming. They just can't use taxpayer dollars to subsidize it. Moreover, our goal on H.R. 1076 is that there won't be a need for this funding going forward. This is something the Appropriations Committee can factor into their funding decisions for fiscal year 2012 and the future. Let me stress again, this bill does not fully defund NPR. What this bill does do is start weaning NPR off of federal dollars. Local radio stations are still allowed to pay membership dues, and they can still buy NPR programs. They just can't use your and my hard-earned tax dollars to pay for them. Instead, the grants for these local stations will be used for local needs. They can create more original programming about issues happening in their areas important to their communities. They can pay for their staffs and even hire more local producers and hosts for their new programming. The federal government's addiction to spending has driven us to our current $14 trillion debt. We need to refocus on what our core mission is. We should not be using tax dollars that American citizens worked hard to earn for something that can be paid for privately. Once again, Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this rule and underlying legislation, and I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on the rule and yes on the underlying bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Florida reserves the balance of his time. The gentlelady from New York is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my friend from Florida for yielding me the customary time. Mr. Speaker, this bill yesterday was brought to the Rules Committee as an emergency meeting. Now, what would be an emergency in the United States? The cost of the war, the damage of the war, unemployment figures, the deficit, home foreclosure, the tragedy in Japan, a no-fly zone over Libya? No. The emergency is that they want to destroy national public radio. This is the latest in a long string of misplaced priorities by the Republican Party. It does nothing to fix the long-term fiscal condition, nor does it create a single job. In fact, it will lose some. The Congressional Budget Office has determined that the legislation does absolutely zero to reduce the deficit. When so many Americans want our representatives to create jobs to responsibly reduce the deficit, bring our sons and daughters home from the battlefields overseas, why are we wasting valuable floor time on an ideological battle that does nothing to achieve any of those goals? Because the bill is a political stunt that is being rushed through Congress under draconian rules. Violating their own promises of transparency, the Republican majority held no hearings, no committee action of any kind, listened to no expert testimony, and provided no chance for the American people to weigh in. And just by saying it is an emergency, apparently in many minds it does become one. But by not providing a true 72 hours, and there were some time there, but the bill itself omitted the fact that the bill would lay over, to allow all members to review the legislation, they violated the spirit of transparency they promised the American people just 5 months ago. My colleagues on the other side must know that they have to pass this legislation quickly before the American people, who have said to the rate of 69% that they do not want this to happen, before they are allowed to speak, to tell them that's something that they don't want to hear. For the American people, unlike the far-right wing, that they know that NPR is not an ideological news outlet, and NPR radio bases their reporting in fact, and really an anomaly right today in the United States. NPR doesn't try to blur the line between opinion, fact, and political agenda. Instead, it takes the time and spends the money to do in-depth reporting across the country and around the globe and go where no other news organization will go. Unlike commercial news outlets that are driven by the need to garner ratings and sell commercial advertising, National Public Radio concerns itself first and foremost with informing the nation on the complex issues that face our country. In stark contrast to the bare bones and often sensationalist reporting found everywhere else, National Public Radio operates 17 foreign bureaus. In fact, it is one of the few news outlets to maintain a full-time bureau in Afghanistan, reporting from the front lines of a largely forgotten war. It is also in the process of opening a bureau in Turkey to report firsthand on the democratic uprisings throughout the Middle East. In the United States, its correspondents spread out across the United States, from Texas to Oregon, telling the stories not covered by cable news pundits that we see on TV every day. In rural America, in particularly, NPR can be the only best source of news. Defunding NPR will cut off this valuable source of news from the southern tier of western New York to the plains of the upper Midwest, and will put rural communities at a major disadvantage in the information age. It's because of their valuable and unique reporting that Americans increasingly turn to NPR to learn about our ever-changing world. In fact, despite the challenges facing the news media, a new report by the Pew Foundation has shown that NPR is strong and growing more popular every day. According to the report, NPR's audience has grown to 27.2 million weekly listeners. This is a 58% increase since the year 2000. In addition, the website is a premier online news destination, garnering 15.7 million visitors a month, an increase of more than 5 million people over the course of a single year. And are those people really going to be angry? I've been a proud supporter of NPR my whole life in public service. While serving in the New York State Legislature, I fought for a launch of news programming on my local public radio station, WXXI. From that humble beginning over 30 years ago, I find myself standing on the floor of the House of Representatives fighting for NPR again today, 30 years later. I stand here because, quite simply, facts matter. The nation wasn't built because we huffed and puffed and wished it was so. We didn't become global leaders by bloviating on 24-hour cable news. And we aren't solving fundamental issues that face our nation by passing this politically driven legislation to appease the far right. Our nation was built and will be rebuilt by the quiet efforts of millions of Americans across the country who will never make it on cable news and will never appear on national television. It's these very Americans whom NPR dedicates its resources to finding, to covering, and to sharing the world with. Their stories aren't simple. Their efforts don't sell advertising space, but their stories matter. NPR's work to find the stories that matter in the in-depth, intelligent reporting that I fight for today. No matter what I say, some will still believe that NPR isn't worth funding because they want it to be true. Some will find it in their interest to scare Americans into believing that in an NPR straw man, while others will take comfort in watching the straw man fall. But deep in our hearts, all of us know that governing through fear and divisive legislation is not a responsible way to move this country forward. It is certainly no replacement for creating jobs. With millions of Americans unemployed and struggling to live, we can't waste another minute on the House floor without debating a bill that will put some Americans back to work. We should not waste another minute ignoring the needs of millions of Americans while playing cheap political games. Yesterday I asked why only National Public Radio? Why not television? I think I know the answer to that. A few years ago that was tried. The House of Representatives actually tried to kill Big Bird, destroy Elmo, get rid of Bert and Ernie, but it didn't work. And I think they didn't want to try that one yet again. And the backers of this bill said to me yesterday that taxpayers shouldn't have to fund with their hard-earned money what they don't believe in. Well, that's an interesting theory, but democracies don't operate that way. If they could, my husband and I and two-thirds of the people in America would gladly be excused from paying the $8 billion a month that we pay for a war which we profoundly do not believe in. We simply must stop this nonsense here that makes us, I think, look ridiculous in the eyes of the world. National Public Radio is something that you can turn off if you don't want to hear it. But for the millions of Americans who depend on it, this just cannot be done. For this reason, I urge my colleagues to vote no on the rule and no on the underlying bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady from New York reserves the balance of her time. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman Shovitz from Utah.
The gentleman from Utah is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate the gentleman for yielding. I rise in support of this rule. I think the American people deserve an opportunity to have their representatives vote on the funding of NPR. Now, let's also make sure we keep this in context, because really what this is ultimately going to do is talk about the funding of less than 5% of NPR. It's not as if this is going to go off the radio right away. And I'm not here to debate the content or make some editorial comment about their editorial comment. But we have to deal with the fiscal reality of this country. Every time we turn around, nobody wants to cut anything. We're going to have to figure out in this country how to do more with less. The reality is we're $14 trillion in debt. We pay more than $600 million a day on interest on that debt. We can't be all things to all people. We have to understand the proper role of government. Every time we make a decision about spending, what we're talking about is, should we go into somebody's pocket, pull money out, and give it to somebody else? And in the case of our federal government now, we're also doing that, but we're also borrowing the money. We're borrowing the money. And so in the case of NPR, which has been wildly successful, as the gentlewoman properly accounted for, Mr. Speaker, their listenership is rising, which gives a lot of us the belief that really they should be moving towards a model where they can sustain themselves through their donations and other funding mechanisms rather than relying upon the taxpayers to fund them. Because we don't have any money. We're broke. And so I'm proud of the fact that early in this Republicans' control of the House of Representatives that we're going to bring this up for a vote, let the will of this body take its course, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes on the rule so we can have that opportunity to vote. Yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from
no,
California
Mr.
is
Speaker,
recognized.
I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, a member of the Rules Committee, Mr. McGovern.
The gentleman from Massachusetts recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the ranking member for the time, and I rise in strong opposition to this closed rule and to the underlying bill. Mr. Speaker, the process in this House is awful. On this bill, H.R. 1076, there were no hearings at all, and to top it all, we had an emergency rules committee called last night for consideration. An emergency. Do you think it was about jobs? Do you think it was about health care? No, it was about defunding NPR. That's what this new majority thinks is an emergency. Not jobs, not the economy, but defunding the National Public Radio. Mr. Speaker, H.R. 1076 is a horrible idea, and I hope everybody in this chamber realizes that this bill doesn't cut $1, not one dime, not one penny from the federal deficit. We all know what's going on here. The reason this bill is before us is that a discredited right-wing activist recently made a selectively edited, misleading 11-minute video of a 2-hour conversation. The target of his little sting was a fundraising executive at NPR who no longer works there. Ms. Blackburn from the Energy and Commerce Committee made it clear in the Rules Committee last night that their justification for this bill is that the American people should not be forced to subsidize content with which they might not agree. Well, that's a lousy way to make decisions, in my view. But if my Republican friends insist on going down this road, Mr. Speaker, then we should be fair and balanced in the way we do it. Over the past several years, it has become clear that the Fox News channel is widely biased. They continue to employ a talk show host who called President Obama a racist. They continue to employ several prospective Republican presidential candidates as, quote, analysts, giving them hours and hours of free airtime, and their parent company has donated millions and millions of dollars to GOP-linked groups. Yesterday, I offered an amendment in the Rules Committee to prohibit federal funds, taxpayer dollars, from being used for advertising on the partisan political platform of Fox News. If my friends on the other side of the aisle want to strip funding from NPR because they believe, wrongly in my view, that NPR is biased, then we should be given the same opportunity. Unfortunately, my amendment was defeated on a party line vote. Again, this is a closed rule. So much for the open process that we were promised. I also offered an amendment to determine how and where hundreds of millions of dollars are spent on television advertising. Not particularly controversial. According to a RAND study, the Department of Defense alone spent over $600 million in taxpayer money advertising in 2007. And I believe we should figure out whether that spending is a good use of taxpayer dollars. That amendment was also blocked on a party line vote. Again, this is a big, fat, closed rule that we're dealing with here. Mr. Speaker, this bill was rushed to the House floor again without a single hearing and without a single markup. So much for regular order. May I have additional 30 seconds?
30 is all I can spare.
Okay. The gentleman is recognized for 30 additional seconds.
Mr. Speaker, over the last few days, my office has been flooded with calls from constituents urging me to reject this bill and to continue to support programming on National Public Radio. My friends talk about the will of the American people. The will of the American people want us to reject what you are doing here today, and that's exactly what I will do today. I urge my colleagues to reject this closed rule and vote no on the underlying bill. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from New York reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman, Mr. Lundgren from California, and the chairman of House Administration.
For 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I was actually not going to speak on this rule until I heard the ranking member of the Rules Committee speak, and she made our point so eloquently I wanted to underscore it. I couldn't believe that she suggested that there was somehow a parity between national defense and NPR. She said, if we're going to come here and talk about defunding NPR, then why shouldn't she get a shot at denying the Defense Department $8 billion or whatever it is? That's the point we're trying to make. We have a huge deficit, $228 billion in 1 month. In fact, it was the shortest month of the year, which just happened to be the total deficit for, I think, the entire year of 2007. You know, I don't know. I heard people on the other side of the aisle criticizing President Bush for deficits. He's a piker compared to what we're seeing right now at the White House. But the point is, how do we do anything here on the floor with respect to trying to bring spending under control if, as the gentlelady from New York suggests, we should treat equally the question of national defense and NPR? That's what the American people are rejecting. They're saying to you, why don't you establish priorities the way we establish priorities? And to come to the floor and suggest that somehow NPR is contained in the Constitution, as does the subject of national defense, I think is frankly ludicrous. So I hope the American people are listening. This is a debate on the rule to allow the bill to be brought to the floor, but the gentlelady from New York has done a very good job of crystallizing the issue. If you don't believe we ought to set priorities, if you believe NPR is important to this nation as national defense, then reject the rule and reject the bill. Because the gentlelady is correct. If they're of equal weight, this is unfair because we're talking about NPR and we're not talking about somehow gutting national defense. But if you believe that somehow national defense has a slightly higher priority in the Constitution and in our constitutional governmental structure than does NPR, then you would reject the gentlelady's suggestion and say, we came here to try and change things. We came here to try and somehow balance our books at some point in time in the future, but the way to do that is to establish priorities. If we in fact believe that saving NPR or giving NPR federal funding is the same as funding our troops, then all is lost. Then all is lost. But I frankly was surprised to hear the comparison of us debating on money to keep our troops in the war zone versus NPR. That is the best example I have seen on the floor, perhaps the most honest example I've seen on the floor, of the difference of the two parties and the difference in, I think, what the American people want us to do and what some in the leadership on the Democratic side.
I'd be glad to yield an additional minute.
Well, I thank the gentleman for yielding. As many are going home, hopefully this afternoon, and we'll have town halls when I'm home, and maybe I will ask the question at my town halls, do you believe that funding NPR is of the same importance or moment as funding our troops in the war zone? I believe that I will have an overwhelming response by the people of my district who suggest what we are doing with this rule is to allow us to deal with those kinds of issues, setting priorities that they sent us to Washington to do. So I thank the gentleman for his time. I thank the gentlelady for explicating the difference between the two parties' approaches on this and understanding the sense of priorities that either exist or don't exist on this floor. For me, I will easily say that even though it may be a tough decision, I would vote to take federal funding away from NPR in order to try and balance our books in the future and do what is necessary to defend this country and those other things that are contained in the Constitution.
Gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentlelady from New York.
I'm going to yield myself 30 seconds to tell my colleague from California to calm himself. He doesn't have to worry. We're not equating war and NPR. What I had said was the basis of this bill today was that people should not have to pay for what they don't believe in. If that's going to be the way the majority is going to run this House, then 66% of Americans would like you not to pay for the war. And I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 2 minutes.
I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my friend for yielding. For at least 15 million Americans, this is another day without a job, and tomorrow will be another Friday without a paycheck. What are we doing? After 11 consecutive weeks of this majority producing not a word, not a bill, not one idea about how to create jobs, what we're doing this morning is debating whether or not to defund and get rid of National Public Radio. Now, the excuse that we've heard is that, well, this will save money. A preliminary estimate from the Congressional Budget Office says this will save zero. So what we are doing is spending the time of the country on whether to defund National Public Radio. Here's what we should do instead. With gasoline prices approaching $4 a gallon at the pump, why don't we cancel out $40 billion in giveaways to the oil industry? Why don't we take most of that money and use it to reduce the deficit? And then why don't we take some of that money and use it to put Americans back to work building clean water systems, schools, roads, research facilities, and other things that we need? Why aren't we debating that bill? Now, members of Congress can say they disagree with that bill. They could amend it. They could vote for it or against it. Why don't we debate that bill instead of whether or not to pull the plug on National Public Radio? 11 weeks, not one idea on jobs, not one word of debate on jobs, an abandonment of the issue Americans care most about. I'm hopeful that the leader on our side of the Rules Committee will give us a chance to vote on a real bill to create jobs for the American people. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from New York reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman, Mr. Okay. I'm going to reserve the balance of my time. Could I inquire to the gentlewoman from New York how many more speakers you're going to have?
Mr. Speaker, we have 5 remaining.
And how much time do we have remaining on each side?
The gentleman from Florida has 20 minutes. The gentlelady from New York has 15.5 minutes.
Thank you.
I yield 2 minutes. 2 minutes to the gentleman from Vermont, Mr. Welch.
The gentleman from Vermont is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentlelady. There's really 2 questions that this bill raises. First, is this a way to deal with a serious problem that we have in this country, which is the deficit? And the answer is it isn't. I salute the Republicans in this Congress for focusing attention on the need to restore fiscal balance. You're right. But the plan you're pursuing to achieve it is dead wrong. You cannot, by cutting 12% of the budget, the non-defense discretionary budget, achieve the fiscal balance that we need. And why you have a plan where you attack Vermont Public Radio, where you attack Planned Parenthood, where you attack home heating assistance, but you leave exempt tax expenditures for oil companies, a swollen Pentagon budget, that means that this is not going to succeed. Even if we wiped out the entire non-defense discretionary budget, we would still have a deficit of $1 trillion. So serious budget cutters have a serious plan that puts everything on the table. Secondly, why have a proposal that destroys institutions? Vermont Public Radio is the link between 251 towns, cities, and villages in the state of Vermont. Farmers listen to it in their barns. Parents listen to it on their way to bringing their kids to school. People at work listen to it for the weather reports, and it welds together the political discussion in the state of Vermont, which is vibrant, which is varied, which has people with different points of view having a common reference point. Public radio is an institution that allows democracy to thrive. And why do we have to have a budget plan that A, by its design will fail, and B, by its application and implementation will destroy institutions that democracy depends on? Vermont Public Radio is an essential institution to all of the people in the state of Vermont, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. We need to preserve it. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from New York reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield the amount of time necessary for my good friend, the chairman of the Rules Committee from California, Mr. Dreyer.
The gentleman from California is recognized for as much time as he wishes to consume.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent for advice to extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Speaker, let me begin by extending congratulations to my very good friend, the gentleman from Spring Hill, our former sheriff, Mr. Nugent, for his maiden voyage in managing this rule. He's done a superb job in taking on this issue. Let me say at the outset, having listened to the debate from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, every single thing that we have been doing on the floor of the House of Representatives is focused on job creation and economic growth. Virtually everything that we have done is focused on job creation and economic growth. Now, some say, why is it you're talking about National Public Radio now? What does that have to do with creating jobs? Well, the fact of the matter is, if we don't take on the $14 trillion national debt that we have in this country and the $1.6 trillion annual deficits that we have as far as the eye can see, we're not going to be implementing pro-growth economic policies. Now, my friends on the other side of the aisle might argue that bringing about some kind of reduction in funding for National Public Radio will cost jobs. The disparity is that my friends on the other side of the aisle tend to focus on government-created jobs, and we want to focus on what it is the American people desperately want and need is long-term, good, private sector jobs. And so everything that we do to try and reduce the size and scope and reach of government is focused on getting, as my friend from Vermont has just said, getting our fiscal house in order so that we can create jobs. Now, yesterday up in the Rules Committee, my California colleague, Ms. Eshoo, referred to National Public Radio as a national treasure. Now, Mr. Speaker, I happen to be a fan of National Public Radio. I think that the term national treasure may just be a little bit of a stretch. I have been proud to support 3 local stations, 2 in Los Angeles, KPCC and KCRW, here in Washington, D.C., WAMU. I've been proud to participate in pledge drives for all these stations. I've done it for public television. I believe in voluntary contributions. Now, yesterday, Ms. Eshoo said that every American pays 77 cents for the benefit of National Public Radio. And while I'm a proud listener of National Public Radio, I will say that I reckon that there are probably half the American people, it's just a wild guess on my part, maybe half the American people who have never even heard of, much less even listened to National Public Radio. And the notion of taking 77 cents from them for National Public Radio is, to me, anathema to the whole concept of what it is that we are trying to do as a nation. Now, my friend from Rochester, the distinguished ranking member of the committee, the former chairman of the Rules Committee, referred to National Public Radio as, and this is not the exact word that was used, but sort of a paragon of virtue. Rather than bloviating on cable television, we have this great model of National Public Radio up there, something to which we can all bow and listen to as the one truth before us. With all due respect, Mr. Speaker, I've got to say that I've heard some inaccurate things on National Public Radio before. Not just things with which I disagree, but there have been inaccuracies. And so with all of the choices out there, I believe that National Public Radio should be one of them. But they are only one of the choices that people have. And since National Public Radio and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting came into existence, we all know that we've experienced this explosion of information from all kinds of sources. And so that's why, Mr. Speaker, while this measure doesn't obliterate funding for National Public Radio, what it does is it puts us, as my friend from Spring Hill has said so well, on a glide path towards recognizing that since National Public Radio receives a very small amount of its funding that they utilize totally from the federal government, this puts them on a glide path towards something that I believe will dramatically enhance the quality of coverage and the credibility of National Public Radio, and that is to have voluntary support. And I will say right here that when we are successful at weaning National Public Radio and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting away from compulsory taxpayer dollars used to fund them, I personally will increase my level of contributions. My level of contributions to those local stations and to other aspects. We need to look at ways in which this shortfall that will exist is addressed, and I believe that we can do that. And I have to say that procedurally it's very interesting to listen to people talk about the characterization of this rule that has come down before us. It's simply because less than 48 hours was provided for the announcement of simply the Rules Committee meeting, not the fact that we're here on the floor. And my distinguished friend from Rochester had on nearly 70 occasions when she was chairman of the Rules Committee, including the several scenic river studies that were put into place and other legislation like that called emergency meetings of the House Rules Committee. And so I think that to characterize this procedure as it's been is not quite as appropriate as it should be. And the fact is, Mr. Speaker, I wish this could have been handled a little differently. We all know that we passed H.R. 1 as it is, that in fact does defund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. But this measure in and of itself focuses on a problem that is out there. It needs to be addressed. And I urge my colleagues to support this rule and to support the underlying legislation. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentlelady from New York is recognized.
I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Davis.
The gentlelady from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All I can say is our office is being flooded by calls from people who are saying, I thought you all were working on creating jobs for the American people, on making sure that working-class families can support their families. And instead, we're defunding federal funding of National Public Radio. And that seems like just a terrible distraction to the calls that we're getting. For many people in the San Diego region, we have KPBS Radio. It's an NPR station, and it's a way to connect people to local community issues and world events. Where else can you find that kind of in-depth reporting? I don't think we can point to other stations that do that. So I'm not up here just to defend NPR, but to say we do have, my colleague said it's not a treasure. Well, to a lot of people that participate, yes, they will continue to fund it with their own dollars, but there is a consistency, there is a continuity, there is an expectation that this is something that is important to our communities. And it would endanger over 9,000 jobs at local radio stations if this funding goes away.
Gentlelady from California reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman, Mr. Woodall, from the great state of Georgia.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank my good friend from Florida for yielding, and I'm pleased to serve beside him on the Rules Committee. And I went to work on the Rules Committee because of my enthusiasm about openness in this process. And one of the very first things we learned during freshman orientation was that we have a leadership team that is committed to openness, the likes of which this Congress hasn't seen in decades. Decades. I didn't plan to come down and speak this morning, but I'm sitting back in my office and I'm listening to the characterization of what's happening down here today. And it caused me to think about my 65 days here in Congress so far. You know, the process was more open and involved more debate on the repeal of health care than it did the implementation of health care. I happen to have brought down the NPR bill today. Now, I'm hearing strong support of the rule that's bringing this bill to the floor, and I hope folks will vote their conscience on the underlying bill. That's what we all came here to do, and I hope that happens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 pages here today that we've asked members to read and digest in 3 days. 72 pages. Now, I wasn't here in the last Congress when 1,000-page bills rolled through this body under the same closed process and the same closed length of time, but I can tell you this. My constituents sent me to read 7 pages, and I've read them, and I'll be voting my conscience on the underlying bill. But, folks, we are involved in a process here that we need to be applauding, not condemning. We're involved in a process here that we need to be nurturing, not undercutting. Have you seen the debate on the floor of the House over the last 2 months? Have you experienced the back and forth on the floor of the House over the last 2 months? And do you feel the difference? Because I do. I absolutely do. I don't just feel it. I hear it when I go back home. We are in the people's house. The chain across the front steps, must be a photo op going on out there this morning. The chain was down. Just felt different walking in this morning, because you could just walk up the steps free. Folks, the chains have come down in this House. The chains have come down in the House, and we're free to engage in this debate, and that's what we're doing. Right here today, we're engaged in this debate. Should we have extensive committee hearings on absolutely everything that comes to the floor? I believe we should. Should we have an open process for absolutely everything that comes to the floor? I think that's a laudable goal. Do we have constraints that require the rules of the House? Because there are 435 of us. It's not like that well-ordered body across the hall where they only have 100 members and they get along so well together. We've got 435 folks with lots of passion and lots of opinion, and we need some structure to make that happen. But this leadership team, with this Congress, both on the left and on the right, has created the most open process with the most extensive amendment process, with the most full debate process that this body's seen in years.
Time has expired.
And I thank the leadership team for doing that, and I rise in strong support of the rule.
The gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentlelady from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentlelady. We need to go back to basic principles here. In 1934, when the Federal Communications Act was passed, people were given broadcast licenses to serve in the public interest, convenience, and necessity. The public owns the airwaves. In a country that wasn't run by corporations, we wouldn't be having this debate, because the public has the inherent right to ownership of the airwaves. Theoretically, it should all be public radio. But it's not. There's just a small segment now of the airwaves we're talking about here. And this bill would stop that from being funded. It is absolutely unimaginable that members of Congress are not aware of the history of how broadcast radio and TV came into being. This isn't about private ownership of the airwaves. This is about a basic public right. And if you take that right away, what you've done is totally capitulate to corporations in America. Protect NPR.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from New York reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3.5 minutes to the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Lambert.
The gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 3.5 minutes.
From Colorado, Mr. Lambert.
The gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 3.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for yielding. I rise today in support of this rule, House Resolution 174, and the underlying bill, my legislation, H.R. 1076, to prohibit federal funding of National Public Radio and the use of federal funds to acquire radio content. It is time for American citizens to stop funding an organization that can stand on its own feet. Long before any of the recent news stories on videos or the Juan Williams fiasco, I sponsored legislation in Congress to pull the plug on taxpayer funding for NPR. I enjoy some programs on NPR, but I have long believed that it can stand on its own. The point at issue is not the quality or content of programming on NPR. The point is not the degree to which Americans support the arts, radio news, and educational programs. The point today is whether government programs and services that can be funded privately or that are otherwise available in the private sector should receive taxpayer funding. Apart from constitutional concerns, as a country, we no longer have this luxury anymore. With the national debt over $13 trillion, the government simply can't continue to fund non-essential services. Let me add that no one can really argue that these programs will disappear if Americans are no longer forced to subsidize them with federal tax dollars. NPR can survive on its own. This bill will accomplish three things. One, it will prohibit direct funding of NPR. It now receives money from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the Department of Education and Commerce, and the NEA, among others. Two, it prohibits the use of federal funds provided through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for the payment of dues by local radio stations to NPR. And third, it prohibits the use of federal funds provided through Corporation for Public Broadcasting for acquiring or producing programming. Now, local stations could use federal funds from the corporation for their operating expenses, but they would have to produce their content or acquire it with non-federal funds. Now, unemployment is now about 9%. When we get federal spending under control, the economy will be stronger and there will be more jobs, and that's why we're doing this. NPR reports that only 2% of its funding comes from the federal government. However, that's only half the story. NPR local radio stations directly receive congressionally appropriated funds that reached $64 million in 2010 alone. Plus, local stations directly receive grants from other federal sources, such as the National Endowment for the Arts. NPR stations then use these taxpayer dollars on licensing fees for NPR programming, which goes back to the headquarters in Washington. Taking this indirect funding into account, federal funds now make up, I would say, closer to 20% of their annual budget. But let me be clear, this measure will not prohibit local stations from receiving any funding. It will just not allow them to use taxpayer dollars to pay NPR programming and pay NPR dues. They can do it without federal dollars by embracing the private sector. I want NPR to grow on its own. I'd like to see it thrive. Just remove the taxpayer from the equation. I thank the Rules Committee for this resolution. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on the rule and to vote yes on the underlying bill, and I yield back